Hello and welcome to Business Week, bringing you news, features, interviews and market analysis across Africa. I'm William Misidada. After 10 years leading the African Development Bank, Donald Kaberuka has just a few weeks left on the job. He will step down in May when his second term as president comes to an end. In a speech in London, he highlighted Africa's economic progress in recent years and outlined some of the challenges still facing the continent. Our London correspondent, Joy Sohaja, reports.
The outgoing president of the African Development Bank has given an upbeat assessment of Africa's economic and political prospects. He was speaking at Chatham House, an independent policy institute in London. Rwandan economist Donald Kaberuka will step down from his post in May and says Africa has undergone huge changes during the 10 years he's been in the job.
I've seen Africa transform. I've seen confidence building. I've seen great aspirations from young people, and I've seen that Africa has now taken not an exotic partner, but is a partner like another part of the world.
He said Africa is the same as anywhere else, offering investors both risks and rewards.
And at the end of the day, if you make the right choices, if you look at risk, price it, mitigate for it, Africa is a place you will make or lose money, like in Brazil, like in Kazakhstan, like in Sri Lanka, like Uzbekistan, like elsewhere in the world.
Giving Nigeria as an example, he said investors need to take the long view, looking beyond fluctuating commodity prices or political uncertainty surrounding forthcoming elections.
So there'll be noise in the Nigerian press. People will argue about this or that particular option. But at the end of the day, Nigeria is here to stay.
And for the countries that rely on oil exports, even falling oil prices could be a blessing in disguise.
For the major net exporters of oil, actually, it's a huge chance to examine their investment plans, to look at their subsidy policies, to look at the sustainability of their fiscals in general.
But his speech also included notes of caution. He said corruption is still a major problem and democracy will only take root when governments focus on creating value for their nations through education.
Let us get these kids from the slums. Let us get these kids from the poor families into quality education. And each African government, especially those with natural resource means, they have ability to do so. If a government wants to say all children go to school, they can go to quality school. And in that way, you cut the transmission of poverty from grandfathers or grandmothers to children. And that can be done, and that is not a rocket science. But with those millions of children out of school, because they're in the slums, that is the promise for the future.
As for his own future, Dr. Kaberuka refused to be drawn on his next career move, but his experience and contacts means he's likely to be very much in demand.
Banana farmers in Uganda have warned the government against the introduction of genetic modified crops, GMO, into the country. They insist that the country should stick to its own variety of seeds. The report.
Green cooking bananas, or matoke, are a feature of almost every main course for 38-year-old Semakula, his wife and 4 children, while sweet yellow ones make for pudding. Matoke is a national staple in Uganda, and many say a meal isn't a meal without it. But in recent years, a deadly bacterial disease known as banana wilt has had a devastating impact, driving some farmers to abandon their beloved crop altogether. It has also sparked a Ugandan version of the global row over genetically modified foods.
Uganda doesn't need GMOs because I've got its own varieties of seeds. And at the same time, Uganda have got ownership on their varieties. So we don't want GMOs to overtake the products and our seeds ownership. If the bill is passed, the farmers, what will they have to face economically they will fail.
Uganda has been conducting trials of disease-resistant GMO bananas since 2007. In 2010, government scientists expanded the range of tests to include rice, maize, cassava and sweet potatoes.
Uganda being a tropical country, diseases and pests are very common. They affect productivity of the crops, affect yield, affect quality of the crop, and many farmers have experienced losses from their farming practice. However, there might be some socio-economic challenges, such as you mentioned, cost of seed. It might happen that this seed is fantastic. Every farmer wants this seed because they don't have to do anything, just plant it, it just resists everything, production is very high, and everybody is looking for this seed. And then there would probably be price issues.
Others, however, are skeptical. It is a neo-colonial conspiracy to make the developing world more dependent on foods and seeds from rich governments and corporations.
The upsurge in terrorist activities in West Africa in recent times is seen as a major threat to maritime security, and players in the maritime industry more than ever need to collaborate to safeguard the region's waters. This and other maritime concerns were raised at the Coastal and Maritime Surveillance Africa Conference in Accra during the week. We have details in this report.
The issues on the table were the need for coordinated efforts in dealing with maritime threats impacting oil and gas production in the Gulf of Guinea and tackling regional energy infrastructure insecurity. It was noted that poverty on the continent is partly to blame for energy infrastructure insecurity. Oil and gas installations often suffer physical attacks, rioting, robbery, and human activities that impact negatively on such infrastructure. These experts at the Coastal and Maritime Surveillance Conference noted could be as a result of poverty or greed. The most recent threat to maritime security is terrorism.
They get their source of funding from this piracy. Okay, they go out, and definitely Boko Haram sitting there will not be Boko Haram if they don't have source of funding. Because they influence a lot of people. Apart from using religion as a decision, that is not it. They have their own agenda. And if you see the poor people, right now you can master people if you have money to do whatever. And that is what is happening. They have to buy arms to fight. Where do they get their monies from? Those are the things. And once it spreads, definitely piracy will come up. And once they have source of funding, definitely then they also be emboldened to carry out the terrorist activities.
A bulk of exports from Africa is done by sea. Therefore, proper data generation and right usage is needed for effective tracking of vessels.
We're not saying that data is not good. Data is great. We're not saying you shouldn't have databases. You should have databases. We're not saying that you shouldn't put transmitters in small vessels or radars on rigs. We're saying it's all great, but it doesn't solve the problem. It just makes you feel more safe.
On discussion also were the development of effective knowledge about high-risk geographical locations and the preparation of the most effective response in the event of an accident. It further tackled the creation of possible offshore security programs.
In Senegal, more than 9,000 small farmers are benefiting from the International Fund for Agricultural Development initiative aimed at encouraging the populace to eat what they grow. TVC News' Nasir Agbalaya gives details in this report.
It's breakfast time in Nyaka village in Senegal. Now there's enough millet for the children to eat as much as they want. But food hasn't always been this plentiful. In this arid area, temperatures are high and rainfall is low, and farmers like Komba Ndofen Sene have struggled to grow millet here. And with most Senegalese preferring imported food, the millet they do produce is also difficult to sell. But this year, everything has changed.
Our production has more than doubled, almost tripled. Before we could not get to 1 ton of millet, but now we produce 2 or 3 tons per year. And this is more than we can eat in a single year. So we sell the surplus to pay for other things we need.
These changes in Kombo's life are part of a bigger government initiative known as the Agriculture Value Chain Support Program, funded by the International Food for Agricultural Development, or IFAD.
If people consumed what is being produced locally instead of importing rice, the revenues will be introduced into the agricultural sector. This would develop agriculture in the area and increase the incomes of the rural households. This would, in turn, improve the economy of the whole country.
To bring these changes, farmers needed encouragement to grow local crops like this millet. So far, almost 9,000 farmers have been trained to use new methods and improve seeds and fertilizers to produce higher yields and better quality crops. This group of women have started combining different local cereals and are packaging it as porridge for babies, selling it in their own shop as well as in the nation's capital. Since the training, many restaurants in this area offer only local grown food. Restaurant manager Aishatu Sise used to struggle to earn a living. Now, local food and recipes not only give her an income, but she sees it as the future of the whole country.
This can develop our economy. Our economy cannot grow if we keep importing. We need to consume what we produce here in Senegal. It is much better.
And the economy is certainly improving in this area. With a strong local market, Komba and the other farmers were able to expand their production. Working with the project team, they built a new storehouse and they can now sell their produce throughout the year without worrying about market fluctuations. With a quality crop and so much surplus to sell, they were able to negotiate regular sales to Nestle in Ghana. This has had an enormous impact on their lives and incomes. So far, IFAD has worked with 250,000 people in this area to grow, sell and eat local foods. The hungry season has now decreased from 6 months to less than 1 month. More than 5,000 previously unemployed people now have jobs. And farmers are finally earning a living, all this from encouraging people to eat what they grow.
Some economy observers in Nigeria want key private companies to list their shares on the Nigerian Stock Exchange. They say the action will speed up wealth creation in the country. TVC News correspondent Effiong Eko reports.
The current practice where foreign investors who set up businesses repatriate all of their profits outside the country may not help Nigeria's growth process. Perhaps the more disturbing trend by these so-called foreign investors is their start refusal to list part of their shares at the Nigerian Stock Exchange for public participation in their activities, a negative practice by which they take so much from the Nigerian Commonwealth to fund their foreign economies.
We should not allow foreigners to come here and take away everything. At least a certain percentage of their earnings should be kept behind instead of taking it. Now, a lot of them are doing round tripping. Most of the money being given to them, they take it back and bring it back to sell. Is that investment?
Kudos to Nigeria's National Assembly, which now discusses the Private Companies Conversion Bill, aiming to bring big enterprises to list their shares. The bill, having passed a second reading, seeks that private companies with shareholders' funds of 40 billion naira, that's about 200 million US dollars, or total assets of 80 billion naira, about 400 million US dollars, should list at least 40% of their shares. That way, the Nigerian market may be deepened while the citizens share in the exploitation of their national resources by foreign companies.
Those companies whose shareholders' fund is up to 40 billion or total assets up to 80 billion to come and register at least 40%, 20% or 60% of their holding to the Nigerian stock market.
We have seen examples in countries like South Africa, Ghana, and Zimbabwe, where it is difficult for foreign investors to cheat the domestic economy.
truth is, the wealth of the world, is really here in Africa. The raw materials that feed the industries of the world are from Africa, and for too long we have taken these things. These things have been exploited from here and sent to the West, and what we get in return is just pittance.
It will make sense to stop foreigners from plundering our national wealth through spurious designs in the name of foreign investments.
Nigeria loses about 1,000 megawatts of electricity to vandalism. And now the government says it plans to intensify efforts at diversifying the energy mix to reduce its vulnerability. This was at the second edition of the Nigeria Power Forum. Kelechi Emekalam reports.
Key players in Nigeria's energy sector are in the country's capital for the largest energy summit in Africa. But one of their major focus is on the challenges in the electricity industry, and they're hoping to find solutions to them. It's a strategic meeting place for these actors, some of whom have come from other parts of the world as well. They're all here to take stock of Nigeria's power sector, where it's coming from, where it is now, and where it should be heading. They identify vandalism and sabotage as major threats that have caused the nation a massive 1,000 megawatts electricity loss.
The scourge of vandalism and sabotage. In my view, it is the biggest single element constraining the increase of electricity supply throughout the country. The pattern of damage is similar. As quickly as one pipe is repaired, another pipe is blown up. The sabotage has kept out of the system probably 1 gigawatt of capacity, 1,000 megawatts.
But the government admits that Nigeria's high dependence on gas-powered plants makes the situation even worse. However, the power minister says they're working hard to secure a good energy mix. Professor Chinedu Nebo thinks it would make Nigeria less vulnerable to vandalism.
Over 70, sometimes 80% of all of our power delivery comes from thermal plants that are gas-fired. Just at the conclusion of the repairs of any particular vandalism act, they strike again within days. And that has made us very vulnerable, and that is the reason that the government is working very hard to diversify the fuel mix to make sure that energy security is guaranteed in Nigeria and we don't remain vulnerable to this vandalism.
But that's not the only issue on their plates, especially for new owners of electricity firms in Nigeria. It's been more than a year since private investors took over the companies with the hope of revamping the sector. But their high hopes are now dwindling.
It's been a real struggle to meet the expectations of customers in the industry. There's been very limited revenue recovery because payments have been characterized by both inability and unwillingness. Lots of people have been unable to pay for electricity because they are unhappy with the quality of service they have and they can only sell what they have. It's a big battle to explain to the customer that in Port Harcourt, for example, we require about 800 megawatts of electricity to satisfy the people. But we get roughly above 200 megawatts to less than 300 megawatts, and this cannot go around to everybody.
At the end, they're hoping that the policymakers would consider working with the resolutions reached here. They believe it would help improve the electricity delivery system in Nigeria.
Business Week returns after this break. Stay with us.